Warning. The following is extremely addictive content. The original Savage Podcast may cause increased levels of success, happiness, and completely transform your life. You've been warned.
Welcome back, everybody. It is another episode of the original Savage Podcast. I am super excited. We're going to shift gears again. We're going to take it back away from the athletics, back into the business world. And today's guest is an absolute pro. I can't wait for this episode because I know that there's going to be so much in there. Get your notebooks, your pen pads, your laptops, iPads, however you take notes, because I know there's going to be so much in here. And I cannot do him justice, so I'm not going to introduce him. I'm going to let him introduce himself. The bow tie guy himself. Give us your story, give us your background, tell us all about yourself. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, first off, Josh, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's good to be interviewed versus interviewing all the time. I do a lot on LinkedIn in that regard, so I appreciate the tap. My name is Daryl Perry, a.k.a. the Notorious BTG, a.k.a. the bow tie guy. I sound like Chris Rock now with all the names, but that's my claim to fame, is wearing a bow tie while helping small businesses understand employee benefits and also helping individuals understand how to leverage life insurance for wealth. Been doing it for 11 years now, coming up this year, and happy to help people understand this thing called insurance. It's my love language, so I like to make sure people know how to read it and how to speak it to make good decisions.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, that's with my background, it's definitely a part of the business that a lot of people don't understand, that extra piece of the business, that employee retention. It got hot, right after COVID or during COVID, really. Is like that employee retention thing got super important, and obviously it had always been important, but people put a lot more focus on it and trying to understand it. And then obviously, TikTok, I think, has also started to really blow up the understanding of insurance too. So it's an exciting time for guys like you, for sure. It's nice to see that some people are getting a little bit more. Used to the information. But
yep.
Yeah, so let's just jump right into it. I kind of ask everybody the same question to get the podcast kicked off, and it's just simple. It's like, in your opinion in business, what do you feel is that one thing that really changes, or that one catalyst for change for somebody to take their level of performance from one level to the other? I say it all the time, is like from plateau to peak. What, in your opinion in business, what is that one thing?
Yeah, I think it's kind of one and a half, I guess I'll say. The first to me is decision. I know when I started working in insurance, I was I moved from Las Vegas to Georgia, which was, a culture shift. And in Georgia, I didn't have a lot of connections. I didn't have people I knew. I didn't have, a lot of network to work off of. So I remember looking at my career like I was working in accounting. I said, I'll be an accountant when I go to Georgia. And I already had some experience. You can see the gray hairs on me, so I had some experience on me. So that was a pay cut. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to take a pay cut to be stuck at a desk all day. So Aflac had found me through Career Builder. And I'm like, oh, insurance. I don't know anything about that, but I made a decision right then to try something different. And when I got started with it, I had a decision to say I want to be the best person in the state at this one thing. So I started out with Aflac in July of 2013. Was our number one account opener half the year in the state of Georgia. And then I decided after that, I want to be the number one, something bigger than the state. So then I was number two in the company the next year. And this is all from cold calling, no referrals, no networking groups, because I didn't know anybody. Literally my first full year in Georgia was 2014. So that decision was one thing that kind of helped me decide, okay, I'm deciding to do this. And I think enough people don't do that to kind of make a decision of where the excellence is going to be. And that was just when I kind of made naively just to say, I think I could do it. So I made a decision. And then it kind of carried on into LinkedIn, how you and I met. I decided one day to be a personality on LinkedIn because I went through the cold calling and all that stuff on building my insurance agency. And I kind of said, that was cool, but I don't want to cold call forever. I want to be able to have people find me. So LinkedIn was kind of bubbling. This is probably 2015, 2016, when I started seeing it, kind of video was introduced and pictures were being more of a thing. And I saw people making the name for themselves. And I said, you know what? I want to be one of those people. So I decided again, I'm deciding to be the person for insurance on LinkedIn that people know from videos and stuff like that. And fast forward today, I got about 30,000 followers, and it all kind of came from during COVID. We was going to do an event with LinkedIn Meetup ATL. So have you ever done a LinkedIn event where you met people in person? You ever done those before?
No, I mean, I meet people from LinkedIn in person, like, or well, not in person, but typically on
Okay.
Zoom. So, like for me, I use it. I use LinkedIn for networking and networking purposes. I mean, if you go on my LinkedIn, it doesn't say what I do.
Yeah.
There's no job history. There's no nothing. It just says like personality or whatever. It just says that have been CEO of Josh Sullivan since I was
There
born.
you
Really,
go.
that's because I don't. That's how I use LinkedIn. It's just to be a personality, just to be
Yeah.
networking and connect with each other. So in my opinion, and when I started building like my personal brand, that's what it was. It was I made a decision. I came from a small town and I felt like the small town mentality is like getting away from us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided that I wanted to get back to that where everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows like the recommendations, like actual recommendations, not because, oh, this person's going to pay me money or this person's going to do this for
Right.
me. And what I get out of it, but more of like, hey, I know that this person's the right fit for you. And hey, go to so and so for this or so and so for this. Even if they're in the same industry, they might have a little bit different niches. I mean, that's how it was growing up in a small town. It was like my friends would bring their cars to my house because they knew, even though my dad's not a mechanic, they knew he could work on cars. So they'd bring him, if they had something
Yep.
wrong, they'd bring their stuff over to my dad's house. Or if you needed, you know, to play baseball, if you played baseball and you needed to get a cage session in, you knew you could go and talk to this other
Mm-hmm.
guy, and he had a batting cage in his garage. Like, it was just that small town mentality, and I wanted to get back to that same type of feel, and that's what I did building my LinkedIn up is the same thing. It's like, hey, I just want to get to know
Right.
people. I want to learn about you and find out, like, I don't want to just be a number.
Right.
Yes, I have numbers, but I don't want to be a number. Like, I don't want to just be a number in your profile. Like, I want to get to know you. I want to learn about you. But I haven't done like an in-person meetup
But
through
you're doing the
LinkedIn
right
yet.
thing. I mean, that's kind of what our mindset was with this event, saying, hey, there's a lot of people in Atlanta that are on LinkedIn, and we should actually meet in person, not just be an avatar or a number like you were saying. So we had this event planned. We planned it probably from February 2020. So you go through the timeline, it was going to be in March of 2020. COVID happened. And I remember that month I booked every single day to go live with somebody on LinkedIn that I knew would be at the event. So I had like 20 something guests booked for LinkedIn Live. And then the third week in March, they're like, oh, we got to cancel because of this thing called COVID. So when it got canceled, I finished my schedule saying, well, I scheduled these people. I got to finish what I started. So when the last day came, people said, hey, are you going to go live every day still? I said, no, that's a job. I mean, doing a podcast is work to coordinate things and the graphics and all that. So I said, I can't do every day, but I'll do once a week. And the reason this all happened, and when I met Shanae Murray, if anybody looks up Shanae Murray on LinkedIn, she's one of the few people that has 1 million followers on LinkedIn. And she asked me to go live on her platform when I was trying to figure out live. And the same idea when I say performance and the decisions and all that, I wasn't confident in live content. I didn't feel like I had a voice to say anything. I didn't feel like anybody wanted to hear an insurance guy talk about anything. So I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to go live. But she asked me, and she had 1 million followers. So I'm like, oh, if you want to hear me, I guess I got something here. So once I went live with her, that was a catalyst for me to say, okay, since I got the feedback from my community that it's something people want to hear, I'll do a live show. And then basically ever since then, it's been just deciding to show up and talk about different things. So that's probably the biggest catalyst of decision. And then I say discipline. That's a big one too. So over the course of time, I've done probably about 200 live shows on LinkedIn. And that was discipline of like planning it out, finding a guest. It's a one-man show for me. I don't have like a 5-person booking guest for me or a virtual assistant. Much like you, I want to know who I'm talking to. So I don't just throw a web page out there and say, hey, book some time on my calendar to be at my show. I actually do a Zoom with them and talk to them first and say, okay, is this a fit? Or we do some kind of phone call or something. And that was another decision, but this discipline behind it of, okay, every week I got to do this, every week I got to do that. That I can say is probably something people, like you mentioned, a small town isn't really talked about. I think that's not talked about either for young people, is knowing that if you just do one thing consistently for a long time, and not even a long time, but just consistently, you'll probably stand out amongst your peers because they'll do it for a little bit. And we're in February now, so we know most of the New Year's resolutions have gone to the wayside. And that's the same thing with business. People have a business plan. I'm going to do $1 million this year. Probably by now, reality sets in and they're like, oh, I don't think I want to do that this year. So decisions and discipline are probably the biggest two things in my life. And I could thank my dad. I'm a military brat, so I'm sure somewhere hearing him as a kid, that got into my head. I can't say he told me specifically, but I can say him getting up 5 a.m. every day, going to do PT and going on tours and stuff like that. I think that kind of soaked up in my brain.
No, I love hearing it like that, put that way, because I'm a big believer in, and I talked about this before, is the organic journey, right? Like, it's I'm not a big like, hey, set goals, set goals, set goals, because again, especially when you put timelines on things, oh, 1 year goal, a 5 year goal, whatever. I think you limit yourself. I think you're putting a limitation on yourself of doing it in that amount of
Mm-hmm.
time. Screw that. Just do it.
Yep.
It might take you 6 months. It might take you a year, it might take you a year and a half, but get it done, right? But I'm a believer in the organic journey, and it's about just going forward and then making decisions as things come
Yep.
to you, right? I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't do that. If I tried to plan out my life, like, it wouldn't work necessarily, because I've shifted and molded and changed where I've been. I mean, yeah, I mean, if you look at my background, it doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but it's just what's been right at the time, and making that decision, sticking to that decision, and doing exactly what it takes to succeed within that decision, right?
Yeah.
Make the decision and then own the decision, right? Hey, I said I was going to do this. I'm going to do it, right? Like you said, well, I said I was going to do 20 lives. So I got to do it
Yep.
now, right? Like, stick to the decision. And you're right. That's what, in a few past episodes, we've talked about this. That's the problem with what's going on right now. People don't want to make
Oh
decisions.
yeah, definitely.
And that's why people are underperforming. Nobody wants to make a
Yeah,
decision.
that makes me think about. I know you're a reader too. Of the book I like a lot is Atomic Habits, where it's by James Clear, and it talks about becoming the person that would do that kind of thing. So he's got the same as you. Like, goal setting's cool, but it's more like, what's the person that gets that goal do on a consistent basis. So it's not so much in 5 years I got to do this. Like, hey, if I want to have a house with a horse or something, what do I have to do to be the kind of person that gets that? And to me, that's actually better for young people, because we have this problem with patience. They want to just have it already. So it's like, if you say, hey, it takes this long, they won't resonate with that versus, well, if you want to get it, period, you have to do this kind of thing consistently. If you want to have it ever, you have to do this thing consistently. I think that's helpful to teach people, because I was supposed to be a computer engineer. That was my path. I had a full scholarship for math and computer engineering out of high school, because in high school, my dad said, hey, we don't have money for college, so you better get a scholarship. Now, later on, I found out he was messing with me. He had money the whole time, but he told me, like, I'm happy you get a scholarship. I would have paid for it either way, but thank you. And that scholarship was math the first 3 years, and then 2 years in Vegas for computer engineering. And I didn't really know what my path was in high school. I was just like, oh, that was the goal, was get a scholarship. So the same thing, like you said, having a goal, I knew to get a scholarship. I didn't know what to do after that. It was like, okay, I got it now. Do I really want to be a computer engineer? Not really. I mean, it wasn't really my thing. So when I got to that part of my degree, I kind of, I'm switching degrees, because the decision wasn't firm. I didn't really make the decision to be a certain person. I made the decision to get the scholarship. So that alone showed me the goal was kind of wrong, in a sense that I've known people that have gotten scholarships and switched their degree also. So it's kind of like, we tell kids, do good in school, but we don't tell them, like, what's the point once you get done? Like, what do you want to do in life? What do you want to be? I think that would help. So at least that time I was thankful to have that scholarship, but I could have had that money go somewhere else, or that time go to something else. And I wasn't clear in that. So I think it's a very key thing you mentioned, just kind of having who you're going to be is more important than the actual timeline.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's definitely, especially today, like, college gets lost on some people because they just go through the motions. And not just college, there's a lot of things, jobs, whatever it might be, right? People just go through the motions to get home, to watch Netflix. Like, and like, to me, that blows my mind, is like the typical 9 to 5 or whatever the schedule might be, and being okay with just going and coming, going and coming, going and coming. And like, where's the purpose? If you don't have some sort of goal that you're working towards, what's the purpose, right? But I mean, I don't think somebody that's like that's going to be listening to this podcast, because if you're listening to this podcast, you want to get better at something.
Yeah, and hopefully we break some of those people that are stuck in the the matrix as they call it, or the rat race, because maybe they're just in the motion and they hear this and say, you know what, I'm gonna change it. I know for a long time I worked W-2 jobs. Most of my college and all that, I would find like jobs working in sales or customer service or something, and that was me going through the motion just to say, hey, I got to pay the bills. And I would read a little bit here and there, but I wasn't like an avid personal development reader and stuff like that. And when the insurance thing happened, the reason it hit me is because when I was working at Circuit City, so I'm aging myself, you might remember Circuit City a little bit. There was a guy that he was a manager there, and he said, hey, I'm leaving here to go manage my dad's insurance agency. And I was like, huh? Yeah, my dad's, he's retiring. He has a book of business for insurance. I'm going to take it over and just run his insurance agency. And I was like, I never heard that before. And nobody in my family works in financial anything. So I didn't know what that meant. So I just it was in the back of my mind, like, okay, insurance is a thing. He was a manager. He's leaving. Maybe it's a good opportunity, but I never really pursued it. So when it happened years later through Career Builder, that's where in the back of my head, I was like, oh, I remember that when I was working W-2 just in the rat race. And he left to go do something better. I'll give it a shot. And that's when it kind of snapped me out of, let me go read some stuff, because I didn't know anybody in this field. So I read, Zig Ziglar, John Maxwell, James Clark. I read like a lot of these different leadership and sales books because I never had that before. And in much of your college point, college doesn't teach you how to be a person necessarily. It teaches you how to do the thing to get that job, and not like, time management, leadership, communication. Those things don't get taught to people. So that's when I say, you know what, I got college under my belt, but I don't have life as far as like being in business. So I was just reading all the time. This audiobook, I played in the car on YouTube, whatever. I was learning that stuff so that way I knew how to break out of it. So hopefully somebody listening to this maybe this is the day. They're like, you know what, I'm tired of the 9 to 5, or at least this 9 to 5. Maybe there's a better 9 to 5 for them, because everybody can't run a business. It's not everybody's thing. But at least, much to your point, you're not going through the motions of just, I'm here, and you're trying to be excellent at what you're doing. Because that's where I say other cultures besides the United States is good at being excellent. When you look at like China and Japan, they train them all the time to be excellent. They finish their school quicker. Or India, they get their doctors done in 4 years. Our doctors take 10 years. So they're like, hey, you're going to learn this stuff now because we got people that need your help. So they push that excellence on them more than we do. And I think that's something important for us to put into our children, is that even if the school system is a system, we have as parents and as older people in the community show them excellence, whether it's baseball coaching, softball, sports, business, whatever. Kind of show them the human side of like, it's cool what you're doing in school, but this is the part of being a leader of yourself that is going to help you for years to come.
Well, so again, not to bash school system or whatever, but I still think it's more the timeline.
Yeah.
Like, again, they're putting timelines on people. It's the timeline situation, right? It's putting goals and saying, okay, well, by the end of this year, you should do this. Mm-hmm. So I always talk about my 9-year-old. I don't ever talk about my 3-year-old, but that's because he's doing his own thing. But the 9-year-old, normally I'm talking about him in athletics, but again, in school, he's already at the level for this year that he's supposed to be at, right? So, he's already finished the year.
Yeah.
Like his testing, they do testing and they have a goal of you have to get to this point by the end of the year, right? And he's in the accelerated program and he still is already there.
Yeah.
Right? So at some point, if we want to, so what's he going to do for the rest of the year?
Yeah.
Right? They're going to be like, all right, cool. And it happened to me too whenever I was in college and I went back to, I went to East Carolina didn't really have a plan, just went because I thought you were supposed to go to college. I started playing golf when I was 18, transferred back to a community college near my house, started playing golf at that community college. I was always good at math, just like kind of you said for yourself. And I transferred back and they were like, oh, you have to take this specific math class because even though you've taken all these other ones, it doesn't count. Yeah. And I'm like, all right.
Right.
And they're like, you can't place out of it. And I'm like, all right, whatever. So I go the first day and they ask a question or whatever, and I raise my hand and she says, and people start saying, oh, he answered it too fast. It's not fair. We didn't even get a chance to start it. And it's like, you're the ones. And then they literally told me that I couldn't, like, they were like, oh, stop answering questions because everybody else can't answer them fast enough. And I'm like, you're the one that told me I had to be here, not me. Like, tell me I can go home.
Yep.
Don't make me sit here and waste my time. But you said I had to take this class, right? Like, I knew that this was below my
Yep.
level. I've taken calculus, I've taken statistics, I've taken all of these higher level courses. You're making me take
Yep.
this. And I went to athletic director and all that stuff and got it sorted out. But it's that same
Yep.
thing. It's even if you're already at that level, the school system, the education system, whatever it might be, puts a timeline on
Yeah.
it. Well, you got to spend 6 months in this class. You got to spend a semester in this class or whatever, even if you're already at that
Yep.
level.
Yeah, this is why my wife was a teacher for 10 years, and this is why we're homeschooling our youngest. We got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. I got 2 teenagers and 2 younger ones, and that's partly why she homeschools, because she didn't want the timelines. Because like my daughter, she's 6, but she's probably at a second grade level on some stuff, and we didn't want to have her. You got to wait to do that, because when you're a kid, you're like, hey, I want to go. Like, I can do this. I'm able to do this. Let me keep going. So she wanted to have that free range of like, hey, if you're ready to do multiplication and double digits this, ready to do all that, let's do it. And I think that's kind of what I think we used to do before it became a commodity in education. We used to just kind of, hey, whatever you're ready to do, you're able to do. Kind of like not the Montessori model, but in that same vein of just let a kid do what the kid's going to do. And I love the education system for just having the structure, but that's where she learned the structure. And then also, okay, if you're past that level, which to your point, let's keep on going, even though you're 6. Let's go to the 8-year-old stuff, because that's where I think we can help get ahead as a culture, is if we're able to accept where kids are and let them move. Because just like business, if you're in a leadership position and they're like, or a W-2 position, and they're like, hey, you can be a manager now. They don't say, oh, you got to wait a year. They're like, no, if you know how to do it, you're doing your job good, I'm going to promote you. And it should be the same thing, I think, with education necessarily. Like, let them move up. It's just like you do in anything else in life. If you're in sports and you're playing well, you want to be the team captain, the coach will say, hey, I think you should be the captain. They don't make you wait until a certain thing. It's like, hey, you just started the team, but you're great. You're the captain. So I think that should be in all parts of life. But unfortunately, we can't do it everywhere. But I do think people that can do that in education is super helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sitting here saying I claim to like have it figured out or how they can solve that, but it's the same situation where there's a timeline
Yeah.
on it. And I do think, we all say that kids learn things way faster than adults do. Obviously, they work differently, but it is that same thing. It's like, hey, why are we putting that restraint on them? And if you're listening, think about that. Think about how you probably restrain yourself
Mm-hmm.
by putting timelines on things instead of just letting yourself go. My introduction into the world of finance, I'd always taught myself out of finance.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because I thought that I didn't belong in there in the world of finance, because I came from a small town. I knew I was never going to move to New York City, because, yeah, that would never work. But like, I taught myself out of it, even though I was good at math, and like that would be one of the things, the numbers, and that's one of the things that people lean towards when they're good at math and numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and I always taught myself out of it. But then whenever my first son was on the way, I was like, hey, I got to learn. If it's now or never, if you want to, like, actually do something for him. And me being me, and I'm curious, I don't like to, I need to know everything there is to know about something before I go into it. And in literally 6 months, I probably taught myself more than I would learn at a 4-year college studying
Oh,
finance.
yeah. That makes me think also about this book.
And
You ever heard of the 12-week year? You heard of that book before? So that book makes me think about that, because it's get more done in 12 weeks than people get in the whole year. And that makes me think of the same thing. I learned everything I had to learn in a short period of time. And I think it's good that we do that sometimes, so we don't limit ourselves, like you're saying, because most people would say, I got to go to college. I got to go to Phoenix University or something and get an online degree to know finance. And then that's 2 years later. But it doesn't take that much, to my comment about doctors in India. They do it in 4 years. Our doctors say 8 to 10. So it's the same information. It's just they make it a sprint instead of a marathon. And I think a lot of our goal setting, if you think of it like a sprint, a sprint runner moves much differently than a marathon runner. And we're not saying hustle all day, all the time, but certain things don't have to be a marathon. They don't have to take forever to do these things, especially with technology and AI and all this stuff we have now. You can kind of automate and streamline some things that took you time before, to let you focus on what is the sweat equity I have to put into this. I always talk about, when I recruit agents in my team, it's about your attitude and your effort. So attitude, I can only help a little bit. And I'm like, hey, go read something, watch some stuff and everything. But your effort is 100% in your control. That's totally up to you. And you wake up what you're going to do with your energy. And that's where I think that the fact that we have technology that can help with those things will help us make it easier to get the effort done faster, so you don't have to take so long.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just about understanding that you can do something and that you just decide and you go
Yep.
do it. That's, I mean, like you said, the decision is really what it is. So I want to switch gears real quick and just, go back to, agents and the people that are around you and under you and things like that. What is like that one habit or that one little thing that you think sets that top producer apart from the middle of the pack? That just upper echelon, what is that one habit or that one trait that really just pushes that to the next level? Like you said, you were number one in the state, then went number two in the country, right? What is that like one little
I'd
thing?
probably say it's executing the plan. Everybody has a plan. I mean, no, let's say it this way: nobody's plan is to be broke. Nobody's plan is to be poor and not have this. So we all have plans in our head, but the people that get ahead actually execute them, whether it's sloppy or not. I'll never forget when I started out. There was a hillbilly guy in the same training class as me. And he opened a new account before I did, and I was like, I know I'm smart. I know I got stuff in my head. I know how to talk to people. I know this, but I wasn't executing. And that kind of showed me, like, no matter what your skill set is in your head, whoever puts it out into the real world is the one that gets the winning. And people look at companies like Uber, that Uber wasn't the best company. Well, they executed first. They just did it first. It doesn't matter how good the company was, whoever executes. So I noticed that with people I recruit and mentor, is that the ones that actually execute when they tell me, hey, I'm going to go visit 20 businesses today. Great. If you actually do it, that'll be one step in the right direction. Or, hey, I made 50 cold calls or whatever. The people that execute, it's kind of part back to that decision, but it's the executions where the world gives you feedback. That's the thing I like about sales and communication, is that when I do it, I get instant feedback for what I did. So if I cold call you and say, hey, I want to meet with you, I find out right away was I good or bad by your response. And most things in life don't have that immediate feedback. Closest thing's probably cooking, I guess, because you can tell, hey, was this good or bad? But anything else like sales is like, hey, I said it bad, I said it good, whatever the case is, the world tells me immediately. So that one habit I say is executing. The people that when I say, hey, finish this paperwork by tomorrow and it's done by tomorrow, great. And it goes back to school. Like, I like recruiting, like athletes are good to recruit for me because obviously they had the same mindset of like, you got to be at practice every day. You got to show up to the game. So they have that same regimen. And military people also, they have that same regimen. The average person that doesn't have that same execution thing, we usually cram everything. So it's like, oh, the test is Friday, I'm going to cram Thursday, versus everyday studying. And that's where I can kind of see that in the business world, who was a crammer and who was a planner, based on when I say, hey, we need this by Friday, and it's Friday 7 o'clock, I get an email or something. No, I can't do it. That's when I start seeing, oh, you're an executor. I forgot the phrase. I think it's like winners or doers or something like that. The people that do things will always be the people that just talk about it.
Yeah, and it's that feedback and the measure of the feedback, right? It's I got to know, so obviously I didn't do it perfect or whatever it might be, right? Like you're saying, it's that immediate feedback, but it's that feedback. It's something that's measurable, right? That is what it is, and the people that and going to athletics, like you said, like that's why I've had people from all different athletics and all different sports on this podcast, is because it does translate so well into business. It translates so much into business and performance in athletics and performance in business. Look at Shaq.
Yep.
Shaq is one of the greatest
Oh,
businessmen
yeah.
of all time at this point, because he just
Yep.
does, right? And I he's got a podcast out there now, the big podcast, and they ask him about business and things like that too. But it's about getting it done. Like, I mean, he even says it. It's just get it done.
Yeah, I mean,
like, and that's what you're saying now. Get it done.
oh yeah, athletes get that because you have a certain finite time. You got 15-minute quarters to play basketball and get it done, or football. You have to get it done. So that's where the measurement part. I think I even tell my kids, like, you inspect what you expect. And if I know you have a task list for your classes to get done, like, because my oldest do online school, so they get their whole agenda kind of ahead of time. So I'm like, you can kind of get ahead for the whole year. You have the whole plan. I mean, you could just go, hey, chapter 5 is a month from now. I'll do chapter 5 now because I can measure it. And that's where I think when you mention goal setting, that's where people kind of mess up, because we underestimate what we can do in a year, but overestimate we can do like in a week. Like, I can get all this done. It's like, well, what's the thing you have to get done to help you get ahead? And I think that's where we don't teach that enough to people as far as like, what's the system? I love Atomic Habits where he says we don't rise to the level of our habits, we fall to the level of our goal. I mean, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And a lot of people don't have a system for daily work to execute. Like, what do I have to do daily to execute just being in this space? Not necessarily to be the $10 million producer and this and that, but just to be in this space. What is something I have to do every day in order to have that? And we just don't teach that enough. So athletes get it because they've been doing it for 10 years, 15 years and as a kid or something. And they're like, yeah, I've been playing baseball since I was 3. So they get, I got to finish the game. But I wish that we just had that more ingrained in our youth. But I think it comes from just reading and just having people talk about it like this podcast. Hearing these stories, I think, will help get through to people more so because, like I said, I was a personal development guy when I was younger. But also podcasts weren't a thing when I was younger. It wasn't out really in the 2000s. Right. Or when they were, it was just somebody in their basement. It wasn't like a real, there's a video and editing and all this stuff. So I'm thankful we're in an information age now where anybody can tap into this when they want to.
No, you're exactly right. And I think, as you were just talking about, we underestimate what we can do in a year, overestimate what we can do in a week. And that, to me, as you were talking about that, it made me think of something I've seen, and I've seen a bunch of people do it, so I have no idea who came up with it, but, they take the container and they put the sand in first, then they put like some small pebbles in, and then there's no room for big rocks, right? And it's like the big rocks are the thing that you have to get done. But if you start with the big rocks first, and then the pebbles, and then the sand, you can get it all in there because it can fall through the cracks, right? And it can fill up. And it's shows like prioritizing things can get you a lot further if you do it correctly, right? And that's exactly what you're saying. If you take care of the stuff that needs to get done, you'll find that you have a lot more time for other things, and can get other things done. And I've heard other people talk about, a lot of people fall victim to the social media scrolling, doom scrolling, whatever you want to call it, right? But I've also heard of really high producers and high achievers say, hey, listen, I know that I'm going to do it, but I schedule my time to do it. I say, I'm giving myself an hour to do absolutely nothing and scroll on Facebook or scroll on TikTok or whatever it might be. They schedule out an hour where they can go do that. I'm kind of similar to that. Like, I prefer to do not much in the mornings, and then give myself time to ease into the day. But then I'll be up late at night working on stuff, doing stuff, because that's just when my brain functions better. I know myself. I know my brain functions really well late at night. For whatever reason, that's when the creativity starts flowing. That's when I start getting ideas. That's just what it is. But I've heard the same thing. Jeff Bezos, apparently, I've heard that his schedule is he doesn't take a meeting before 10 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
He wakes up. It's not that he wakes up at 10, but he wakes up. He sits on the couch. He eats his breakfast leisurely, watches TV for a little bit, and doesn't take any meetings until 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it's smarter to do that.
Just goes about his
have
day.
A plan. I mean, I know, I'll set my phone to, block certain social media throughout the day. So, obviously I use LinkedIn a lot, but I'll block it from, 9 till 11 or so to say, hey, the golden hour posting's already passed, so I don't need to be on there. So I'm using it like a sales outreach kind of thing for the most part, thought leadership. So I'm like, hey, I posted before 9. I'm good. I can comment later or whatever, and I leave it alone because if I don't, I'll sit in it for an hour watching it. Oh, I got another comment. Oh, I got another like. So I think a lot of people, that's helpful just to have sections of time for things because we've seen this. The thing about success is there's no secrets anymore. Everybody said this is my routine. Like when Jeff Bezos said I don't take a meeting before 10, I've heard other people do the same thing. Like I start my day at 9. I don't, they have a certain regimen. And I'm reading the 5 a.m. Club right now, which is a tough to implement if you don't get up 5 a.m. When you mentioned staying up late, I'm like, man, this is tricky. But the stuff in the book is talking about I give myself a routine. I give myself the best way to start my day. So it doesn't have to be 5 a.m. It could be 10 a.m. But you just say, when I get up, this is my routine. Or when I'm working, this is it. So I block stuff on my computer, on my phone. And even though we're saying use social media for sales and all that, we got to also put guardrails on it because otherwise we get sucked into it. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, my TikTok that I use is the kids' version of TikTok like China has. I have it on restricted mode. I block all the nonsense. So when I'm on there, it's just to post something about my work and then comment on a couple people's thing and then move on. I don't sit in it for hours. And even if I did, It's mostly educational. So I look at these tools, like everything's great. We have so much connectivity now that we have to kind of isolate ourselves a little bit because anybody can reach you anytime now, whether it's through your social, your email, text, whatever. You have to put some guardrails. So I think high performers kind of get that. That yes, it's good to be visible, and the dopamine hit from social media is great, but I have to get stuff done. So if you put in your schedule, hey, I got to do my calls for an hour. After that, you can say I'm gonna reward myself with doom scrolling. That could be a reward to somebody, who knows? But you have that system to say, I have to get this done. I have to get this proposal done. I have this in this email. I think Eisenhower's Matrix has kind of changed my life. If you ever heard about that, the can't.
I haven't seen
Okay,
that.
it's basically about important, urgent, not urgent.
Okay.
So I kind of live. It's kind of when you think about an oil change for your car. It's important, but it's not urgent. Because you need to get an oil change every 3-4 months depending on your car. It's important, but it's not urgent. But if you don't get the oil change, it becomes urgent because that check engine light cuts on, or your car starts acting funny. So when I learned that, I kind of live my life that way for the most part. Like, what's the important but not urgent stuff I need to do, which is meetings or marketing, prospecting. That's important, but it's not urgent. But if I don't do it, when that bill comes and I'm like, I don't have any money, well, I didn't do the important work. So that tiny little square, it's talked about a lot in the 4 Disciplines of Execution book, but that's basically where I kind of learned prioritization as an adult. Nobody showed me as a kid, but I definitely talked to my kids about, is it important and urgent, or is it urgent and not important? Kind of think about that, because that really helps people.
I'm looking to see where that book. I've got that book. I was gonna say it's funny because like I literally have the 4 Disciplines of Execution.
Great book.
Like I have the same book.
Great book.
And I just don't see. I don't know where it's at right now, but it's in this room somewhere. I got but it's not on my shelf right here. Those are my favorite ones, but that I go to all the time. The Disciplines of Execution book got that one too. So it's just funny, right? Like there you go. People that execute at a high level kind of understand the same things, kind of see the same things, read the same things. It tells you that anybody can get there. And I again, I relate it back to athletics a lot of the time. I've heard some of the greats and some of the elites say, like, everyone can get to a good or a great level. Not everybody can become elite at everything, because that's just not how percentages work. There's always going to be somebody that's a little bit better, and if there's somebody a little bit better, then they're going to be considered the elites, right? But everyone can get to that great level. Everybody can get to a specific level that maybe they don't think is achievable.
Oh yeah, and it's funny when you mention that elite level. Like when I think about you and I on LinkedIn, like 1% of people make content once a month on that platform. 1% of people make content once a month. So I'm like, dude, if you do 2, you're elite because you're in the top 1%. If you do 2 pieces of content a month, and it goes back to that consistency thing. People always ask me, how did you grow your following on LinkedIn, or how did you do this and that? Like I just showed up every day, and it sounds simple and kumbaya, but it's the truth. All I did was every day I'm going to post something for like a long time. That was my thing. Every day except Saturday and Sunday, that was kind of optional for me. But Monday through Friday, I showed up. And even building my insurance agency, when I went through the interview process, the guy said, I said, what's the secret sauce? And he said, oh, get 1 appointment a day. And I was like, that's it? Just get 1 appointment a day? He's like, yeah, that's it. If you do that, should be good. And I'm like, really? That sounds too easy. I'll get 2 a day. Just to be, because I was like, I told my wife, hey, I'm going to go to work and get 1 appointment a day. I felt like I'd be like a loser at that point. Even though he told me this is the way, but I'm like, nah, that doesn't sound right. So that was all I did. And most of the really good things I've done in the insurance industry have been like simple things of like, every person I talk to with the business, I quote dental and vision. Whether they take it or not is quoted. And they asked me, how do you guys owe so much dental and vision? That was it. He's like, that's all you did? Like, yep, all I did was every single person that had a business, I quoted dental and vision. And now it's a requirement for the whole territory because I did that one little thing. So it's not hard, like you said, to be elite. It's just that decision has to happen. And you got to execute that decision. That's always the crux of it. If you decide, I'm going to do this, actually do it. And it sounds simple in saying versus doing, but at least if you keep reminding yourself, like have it on your wall, have it on your phone or something. Like on my wallpaper, it says, "My success. I will not miss success due to lack of effort. I will not miss success due to lack of effort on my part because I'll never have that be the reason that it's because of me. I'm not showing up." And athletes, business professionals, entertainers, they all kind of get that because they're kind of like the lights on you of you got to perform. If you don't perform, we don't win this game, or if you don't perform, you don't get this showcase on this music platform. And that was a big part of me when I was younger in music. I was a really good rapper, and I had a job working on that, trying to get into that career, but I didn't have the decision at the time. I was good at the technician part of like doing the music, but I didn't decide, go market, go show up at clubs, go do this and that. And I don't know if I ever told you, I had a brief stint with 50 Cent where I had a fun rap beef with him. So 2005, I'm in college. His album The Massacre comes out. Virginia's kind of my home. So people say, where are you from? Virginia's kind of my hometown. And 50 Cent made a song talking about Virginia. And I was like, oh, I got to say something. So I did a song on this website called SoundCloud. Now, this is pre-SoundCloud. This is before the internet really had social media. I think Facebook was barely a thing at that time. So I put the song on SoundCloud dissing 50 Cent. Went number one for weeks. It was like 12, 13 weeks number one on the website. And I'm like, holy crap, this is crazy. And then I had a voicemail on my Nokia brick phone. Somebody left the voicemail saying, this is so-and-so from Shady Aftermath calling for a cease and desist in your song. And I'm like, huh? Shady Aftermath? Nah, this is a joke. So I called my homeboys. Hey, which one of y'all's pranking me? Wasn't me, dog. I called like 5 of my best friends that know I'm doing music. And none of them said they did it. So I called the number back after I verified, and I got the hold music. Eminem was the hold music. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a really Shady Aftermath. This is Eminem hold music. The guy, this is blah, 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 and the voicemail picks up. And I'm like, oh, this is my shot. So I hung up and I left the song out there. But I didn't know how to market it. I didn't decide, let me go to a club and have a DJ play this because it's been number one for weeks. I didn't know how to do that. So that's goes back to my point of executing and the decision. I did the thing, but I didn't decide I want to be the best guy in college rapping. So that's where I always say Kanye West stole my career because we was in the same, parents didn't sell drugs. I didn't do anything like that. I knew how to produce. I knew how to rap. So I was like, he stole my career, but he executed. I didn't execute. So that was my clear example of one person decided, another person didn't. And I'm not bitter about it, but I know it's my fault. So now I kind of think about anything I want, I have to decide and execute.
Oh man, that is a lesson on like steroids right there. I mean, there's so much in that, right? Because you're exactly right. It's not just about talent.
Right.
It's not just about talent. You have to have the other stuff. You have to put the other stuff in, the effort in, the understanding, and it's okay. You know, in a video that I've posted, it talks about understanding and being truly honest with yourself and understanding your personal perspective of yourself, right? And understanding who you are. And one of the things that comes up from that and doing that, you know, internal audit or whatever you want to call it, is understanding your strengths and weaknesses. And if you understand that, hey, I'm the talent. I'm talented. I understand that, but I'm not good at the paperwork side, or I'm not good at the marketing side. I'm not good at this, or I'm not good at that. Then you can, if you're honest with yourself about that, you can go and get that.
Right.
You can go and find that in somebody else and put that as a member of your team and then go into it. I mean, look at the biggest people in the world. They have teams of 10, 20, 30 people around them because they know what they're excellent at and they know what they're not excellent at, right? And that's exactly what it is. They know what they're perfect, like, and gosh, I can't remember what I was reading, but it was something, and it basically was like, you know, when you're a business owner, when you're, you know, whatever, it doesn't have to be business owner, but in order to expand, in order to grow, in order to hit that peak performance level, you have to do what only you can do.
Oh yeah.
Don't waste your time on the stuff that somebody else can do, right? Do what only you can do. What is it that only you can do? What makes you special that only you can do, right? Let's say it's rap. Let's say it's singing, rap, whatever it might be, right? Music. Everybody on the team can't rap.
Right.
Right? But there are people on the team that are great at marketing, that are great at sales, that are great at the publicity side. All of that stuff, you can have that. You can fix that. The it factor, that's something that only you have.
Yep.
But guess what? They have the it factor potentially in the market. They might be the best marketer because that's their it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not saying that it belongs to one person. Everybody has their own it.
Yeah, and I think that's where I missed the boat. I was 25, I think, when that happened, and in college in Fort Valley, Georgia, no real people around me. I was just making music on my own, so I didn't have my usual team was back in Virginia, and we all graduated college and went, one went to Texas, one stayed in Virginia, I went to Georgia, so we all were separated. And again, this is pre-internet, so there wasn't really like a lot of, hey, let's hop on a Zoom to work on the marketing plan. Like we're still mailing stuff snail mail for CDs. So that was definitely the problem, is that I didn't have a team, and I didn't really go look for a team. I didn't, make the decision like I need to go find someone to help me. I was kind of being, young man, ego, bravado. I could do it myself. I got this number one song, da da da. But I didn't put any kind of real culture and community around it. So I think that's very true, that you can have the best talent. And there's people out there. I mean, look at those basketball players that are great, but they don't have anybody helping get them seen by a scout or helping them with the recruiting or making their video reel. They don't have that stuff. So they sit unknown because of that reason. So I'm 100% believe that. And I went through it. So I know if you don't have the right people around you or a team at least to help you, you're going to go only so far. It's kind of like that African proverb. If you're going to go, if you're going to go fast, go alone. But if you're going to go far, go together. And that's where I didn't have it together. It was just me, so I was moving, but I hit a plateau.
Yeah, and I think that too, like you were saying, with sometimes you have these basketball players that are great, but they don't get recognized or whatever. And I think that shows when you look at, or if you listen to college sports or whatever, you'll hear a lot of the times they say, oh, this person is from such and such. And you'll hear 4 or 5 or 6 different players all come from the same spot. Right? All of them came from the same. Why is that? It's because the coach understands how to shine a light on those players. Look, Oak Hill Academy. Let's go, Virginia. Oak Hill Academy, right? Every basketball player, Oak Hill Academy, because they understand that is a place that they're going to get trained properly. They know that school is going to put them in a position to succeed. They trust the coaching staff there. They trust the program. They trust all of this stuff. Same thing. Going down to Florida, right? IMG Academy. IMG, if you don't know what IMG Academy is, you can go look it up, whatever. But IMG Academy, like, they were like, all right, cool. We are this talent agency. Well, let's go build a school where we can produce the talent that we represent. We know what it takes because we've been representing all of this talent for all this time. Now let's just go build a program that, and nobody's ever done that before. You ever seen an agency go produce their own talent to where they know that like they built their own pipeline? Like it's a genius move. Yeah. They build their own pipeline. It's like, oh hey, we represent athletes. Yep. We're now building a school to produce the top athletes in the world.
Perfect, yeah. That's a great comment.
They build a pipeline.
I think you see the examples of, you see it happen in like college football and Nick Saban. He has the pedigree. So people go to Alabama. Like if I go to Alabama, I know I'm gonna get a chance to the NFL. Or if you look at the my dad's a Chiefs fan, even the Chiefs fans in Super Bowl IV. And recently now they have a dynasty going where they're like, hey, we got a process that works here. People want to go play for that. So it's great that this IMG college did the same thing of looking at the problem and making a plan. But I think that goes back to that same thing of the intentionality and making the decision. Hey, we got talent. We got to execute on this. All these things, like I want to make it simple for people listening to this, is that anything is really a decision away, which sounds, I know, like a t-shirt or a mug or something you buy at Starbucks, but it's really the truth. Anything you want is a decision away. Now, whether that decision takes a year or 5 years, it's just that decision. Once you own it and say, I'm going to go with it, that's what these athletes do. They say, I want to be, if you watch any athlete story, they'll say, oh, I wanted to be the Michael Jordan of my time, or I wanted to be the Tom Brady of my time or something. They all say the same kind of thing of, I wanted to be the best. So we can't ignore the secrets that are all over the place. Like every person's at the same thing. I think we're just kind of, humans complicate things. So we think there's got to be something else to it. There's got to be something else. And I'm thankful I was naive enough to my mentor that said, hey, get one appointment a day. That I wasn't trying to, well, I'm going to go make a billboard, or I'm going to go start a newsletter, or I'm going to do this and that. I see people that I mentor try to do that. Like, I'm going to go do these other things. Like, I hear all your creativity, spirit for 6 months. Like, what do you mean? Don't be creative for like 6 months. Just do what I tell you. And that's not to say I'm Mussolini and I'm controlling you. It's just, I know the analogy I always give people with mentorship is that imagine we're at the Grand Canyon, and there's this long bridge connecting two sides of the Grand Canyon, and it looks very questionable. It looks shaky, it's rocking in the wind, planks are missing. You're like, there's no way somebody walked across that. But I'm standing on the other side like, hey, come over here. It's fine. And you're looking like, how did you get over there? I walked over the bridge. No, I couldn't. You couldn't have done that. No, I'm telling you, I walked over the bridge. Just come over here. Nah, I'll get a plane or a helicopter. Dude, I'm telling you, I'm here. I walked over this exact same bridge 5 minutes ago. Come over here. That's my analogy for like, that's what leadership is like. We're telling you, I did it. At least people that have done the thing they're mentoring. If you haven't done the thing, you can't use the analogy. But if you've done it, hey, I broke my teeth in the concrete, getting cold calling and people yelling. I've had that happen. I know. Come over here. And I wish people would stop trying to make it their own way sometimes, because the path has been laid out by everybody before us.
I've been there so many times training people in sales. I'll write a script for them and say, hey, here's the script. Use this. This should be your first thing that you say to somebody. And then I meet with them a week, 2 weeks later and say, all right, how's things going? I haven't had any meetings. I haven't gotten the response rate. And I'm like, all right, well, I've got thousands of data points over here that say the response rate should be this.
Right.
So I know that the script works. I don't put a script out for you to use without testing it first.
Right.
I know that it works. Here's the proof. Here's the right. And then they're like, I'm like, so what do you say? Oh, well, I thought that was too simple. So I added da. Why'd you do that? Don't do that. That's bad.
Yeah. Slap my hand. Yeah.
Do it again, right? Do it again. All right. Don't do that. Let's make sure we stick to the script. 2 weeks later, not getting any appointments. Well, all right. What are we doing now? Boom. Same thing, right? Always, they want to reinvent the wheel, right? And like you said, it's not reinventing the wheel. We've seen it. They want to overcomplicate things. We've seen what works, and then we want to be like, well, I want to do it this way. Okay, well, wanting to do it in a different way is not going to make you successful, right? Just wanting it to happen will never work.
Yep.
Like you said, it's the decision and the discipline. It's not the want. We all want to be rich and famous and da-da-da-da, or just rich and maybe not famous. Like, I would much rather be rich and anonymous, to be honest with you. But, you know, it's that thing. And you know, what you were saying earlier, it reminds me of an example that I used to use, right? And I think that this is the perfect way to sum up the decision thing is look at it like a GPS. A GPS can't tell you what to do until you put a destination.
Yep.
You can't just get to the end of your driveway and your GPS says turn left. It doesn't know where you're going unless you put a destination in. That decision has to be made of where you're going. Now, on the way there, you can miss a turn and it'll fix it. You can change your mind on where you're going and put a different destination in. You can add a stop along the way. There's a lot of things you can do once you get going. But the first thing you got to do is put the destination in.
Absolutely.
First thing you got to do is make the decision.
I love it. That's a great analogy. And we all use GPS every day. So if that doesn't resonate with somebody, you're not listening.
Absolutely. But that's it. I mean, it's like you said, I mean, that bridge, I've never heard the bridge thing, and that's I'm definitely going to steal that because it's
a little bit
exactly
it's
what
a little
it
visual.
is.
I like visual things for people to kind of help them see like that's literally what I feel like all the time, because it's just like I'll see someone really, when you mentioned talent earlier, I'll see someone really talented and think, oh, they're going to kill it, but they don't want to follow the process. They're like so talented, they have an ego of like, I have to do it my way, and it's like, no, don't do that now. Right now, do the basics. And then you can get fancy and do the spin move and other stuff you're going to do on your own. But right now, let's block and tackle. I mean, if you look at the best sports teams, they always talk about, let's get back to the fundamentals, get back to basics. They don't try crazy plays. I mean, the last Super Bowl was a lot of basic plays. It was a very low scoring game, a lot of defense. It wasn't very many like crazy plays. There was a couple, but it wasn't like college football. It's like they just triple sideways lateral pass. It was like, no, we're just moving the ball down the field. And it's funny that when you look at like martial arts as an example, they say the master doesn't know how to do the kick. The master does that kick 1,000 times where you just did it once or something. So the master does the same stuff as a white belt when you think about karate. It's the same moves a white belt learned. They just know how to do it better because they've done it thousands of times. And people think, I got to have a special kick. Well, no, most martial artists are good at like that one kick a certain way. And if we can't take a lesson from that, I don't know what else to teach you, because that's where people complicate, and humans are notorious for this. Just Find someone that did it and copy them. There's enough money out there and opportunities that you can literally copy somebody without, copyright infringement, but like the way they did something, you can go look at someone on LinkedIn and say, what are they doing? Somebody on Instagram, what are they doing? Somebody in sales, what are they doing? And copy it. And then once you do it a little bit, then you tweak it. But don't come at the very beginning like, I got this new script from Josh, let me rip it apart. No, follow the process beginning. Then once you have some feedback, oh, I talk fast, I got to change this word. I can't pronounce that word, let me change that. Then change some stuff, but don't like as soon as you get it. That's what drives me crazy in leadership. The first week, people are changing stuff. It's like, dude, you don't go to somebody's house and say, I'm going to redecorate as soon as you get there. You get comfortable, and then you might make a suggestion, but you don't right away, hey, I hate that paint on your walls. Well, too bad. It's my house. You can leave. You got to kind of warm it up a little bit before you're like, hey, I want to change something. Follow the path of those before you that have made success, and you'll be successful at the same time.
Abso-freaking-lutely. I mean, it's one of those things that it's the simple stuff, right? Like you're talking about in the last Super Bowl, when they got done, when the game was over, all the 49ers players said, we didn't know the rules
which is horrible.
and the Chiefs players said, we went over overtime rules every week of the season and multiple times in our preparation to get ready for the Super Bowl. Well, right there is why one team won, one time.
It was one thing.
The preparation was so much better on the simple stuff.
And you can see
they didn't prep on the difficult things. The simple
and you can see Patrick Mahomes' face you can see he was almost shocked when they said, "Oh, we want the ball first." Like it was a quick second. He was like, "Really? Okay."
Yeah. Oh, I've listened to the podcast. Like I've listened to Jason Kelce and Travis Kelce's podcast about them saying it. And Travis Kelce goes, when they said they wanted the ball first, the referee looks at him and goes, are you sure? He's like, the referee was like, are you sure? And then he said, when he heard it on the sideline, Travis Kelce says, when he heard it on the sideline, he started jumping up and down like, we about to win. We're going to win. They made a mistake. We're going to win.
The referee's asking you.
Something
simple.
The
referee's asking you, are you sure you're in a bad spot? That's when you should change your decision. Like the GPS analogy you made, like, I need to reroute. Because if the referee's asking me.
Reroute.
Something's wrong. If the referee's on my side, like, hey, hold up.
Yeah. No, that's exactly, but it's the simple stuff. And to be honest with you, I love listening to I love listening to that podcast because they do talk about the small things and the simple things that make teams better. And when they're good, like this is a perfect example. Like Eagles were in the Super Bowl last year. This year they look terrible, right? They went out first round playoffs or whatever. And Jason Kelce the whole time was saying, we're doing the simple things wrong. We're getting the simple things wrong. We're not doing the simple things. Like you said, do the simple things first. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel. Stop trying to do all of this extra stuff. I say it all the time. Everybody in the NFL is talented. Yeah. Everybody. The Panthers, my team, listen, them dudes are still way more talented than I am. Way more talented than anybody out there. It's the old adage of, do you think the best college football team could beat the worst NFL team? No, they couldn't.
Yeah.
They could not. It's not even close. But they're all more talented. But it's the simple things, it's the environment, it's the culture, it's working together, it's a lot of things that go into a team being 1-12 versus or 1-16 versus being,
undefeated.
12-4. 12-5, right. It's just the little tiny things, the simple things. And I think that goes so overlooked. And, that's exactly what you're saying. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel. Just find what works for other people in your industry and do it.
That's it. And just use the wheel. Instead of reinvent the wheel, just use it. That's kind of what I say lately to people. Like, you can throw rims on it later, but you put some rims on later. But right now, use this basic wooden wheel. Later on, you can get the spinners and all that. But for now, use the wheel that you have.
Don't reinvent the wheel, just use it. Dang. That right there, I think is I think that's the perfect way to wrap this up, because that is the quote of the podcast for sure. So, man, I thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that people are going to get a ton out of this. But just shout out, your social medias, all that good stuff, where people can find you, where people can
Yeah,
interact.
so Daryl Perry II, you'll find me all over LinkedIn. Probably if you type Daryl P, I'll pop up first. But also the hashtag, the Notorious BTG, is a hashtag I go by. So if you follow that, I'm the only one that has that hashtag. And then I have a TikTok because of my 65-year-old father is a Chiefs nut. And he talks about the Chiefs on TikTok. So I made a TikTok about 4 or 5 months ago. So I'm the same thing, the Notorious BTG on TikTok.
Awesome. Well, guys, get ready because we're coming back at you next week with another crazy episode. It's just one after the other after the other. It's the simple things like listening to this podcast that make you better. Let's go.